Hello and welcome to a unplanned Chip Kelly just got fired special. I'm your host Oscar Hazel. This is Miami Pod, joined by Ian Wharton. You can follow at NFL Film Study. And yeah, the Eagles fired Chip Kelly, and so now we're gonna be really excited about Chip Kelly coming to Miami, and we'll see what happens in the next 6 or 7 days. I think it should move quite fast. There's going to be, I think everyone's kind of touting the Titans because of the Mariota link. So what's kind of are you surprised by it happening so quick? I mean, we're already seeing kind of the locker room issues and kind of and players talking to the owners, like the reason why this happened. I was pretty surprised.
Yeah, really stunned. I mean, this is a guy, he had a lot of success in his 3 years. I mean, yeah, he went to the playoffs twice, 10-6, 2 years? So, I mean, yeah, this year was a bit of a crash and burn, but, I mean, to dump a coach that had a better record than some of the best head coaches in the NFL today, and, through their first 3 seasons, is really shocking. I mean, there must have been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and I think that that's probably one of the 2 big concerns that you would have with Chip Kelly. The other would be finding a good defensive coordinator. His defenses in Philadelphia definitely underachieved considering their talent. But yeah, no, I'm absolutely shocked. Absolutely shocked that this happened. Like a Tuesday night, nonetheless.
So you were talking about defensive coordinators. So I've had a couple of questions. Andre Jardim was asking what DCs would be under Chip, and do you think they'd stick with a 4-3? So he's kind of run with like multiple fronts. We've seen quite a lot of 2-gapping, but they do it in a nice way in which would kind of work with Sue, in which they put defensive linemen heads up on all 3 of the interior linemen, so that would give Sue more single teams. So I think that would be beneficial, because if you're 2-gapping, you're gonna get double teams all the time for Sue, whereas maybe when he's 1-gapping, you can shoot the gaps more. But if he's heads up but a single team, that still kind of works well as well. Are there any kind of coordinators that pop up, or do you think it'll be more kind of who gets let go, or if he kind of has his eye on a young guy?
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know of any one particular person that he would target. There's not much precedent.
I think it would be kind of like 3-man front, have like edge rushers that kind of roam in space and drop as well. Maybe it means you hold on to Dion Jordan because of that obvious connection. You're looking at kind of more range and guys that like to get upfield and penetrate as linebackers, and then more size at the corner position as well. So Zombie will like Chip Kelly because he loves size, like everywhere. So you see like Jordan Matthews in the slot, big slot corner, slot wide receiver. They've gone for size at all the corner positions, and like Chip has always said, if you can't be better, be bigger. And obviously you want to be better, but that's his kind of mentality. Is like, if you can't be better, at least be bigger, and that gives you some advantage. And we've seen with, at least with Hickey and Tannenbaum, the past 2 years, their projects at corner have been bigger guys like Lippett and Akins. So that could be kind of another connection. There's been a lot of people saying he's not a Tannenbaum guy. To me, that's just kind of saying you don't know how to say why you don't think he would fit, but you don't really have anything to base that on, because I mean, unless Tannenbaum has his perfect head coach written out on a dating website somewhere, I don't know how you can judge who is a Tannenbaum guy or not. Because I mean, like if you go off his NBA resume of clients, it's Steve Kerr and who's the Cleveland coach again?
Mike Pettine.
No, Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh, David Blatt.
Yeah, and I mean they would be both kind of more Chip Kelly than not, right? If you're doing like a parallel of NBA coaches to NFL, and they were both represented by Tannenbaum. So I don't know what kind of where people are getting that Chip Kelly isn't a Tannenbaum person, other than saying that Tannenbaum wouldn't like an ego, but then lots of people are saying he would like Hugh Jackson, who has a massive ego and
Yeah.
loves to bathe in the limelight. And
Well, and I think part of it too is a bit of just like fear with Tannenbaum. I don't know why. Like, there's just like this general unease about him. Like, I mean, I
he
know
has
that he
got
did some
kind of
bad
like
things, but
he kind of does come off as kind of like a cheesy salesman.
yeah. No, I mean, I get it, and he. It's not like he was, uber successful. I mean, he was pretty successful with the Jets. I mean, I gotta say that. Like, I think that's fair to say. But ultimately, I just feel like people just. I don't know. I just feel like I see a lot of people just kind of burying him already without doing anything. It's like the guy really hasn't done anything wrong with the Dolphins so far.
And I guess if you want to do the positive spin of Tannenbaum, Chip Kelly having things in common is the sports science kind of angle. And we've seen kind of it start with Catapult with Hickey, and then Kitman Labs and kind of inner soul companies and all these different kind of more tech based things to do with prolonging athletes' careers. I think we've maybe seen less of the application of that with Dan Campbell. But that could be something where at least Catapult has been in place. And there's probably about, I think it's 22 teams at the moment. But with Kitman Labs, there's only the Bucks are the only other team that share that. So that's something that Chip Kelly doesn't have to introduce. And particularly with player tracking, that's something with the existing roster, you want to have a database of those athletes as well. So that's kind of if you're looking for positives. And then also, Stephen Ross has tried to go after big fish and missed out before, and maybe he goes that extra mile to try and make sure he gets the guy he wants this time. So that could be kind of another angle if you want to put a positive spin. Should we just talk? I think this is kind of an interesting way to talk about him, 'cause there's kind of two different parties kind of discussing Chip Kelly on Twitter, and they're the two parties. The way kind of I view it is, there's the people that like the X's and O's and focus more on scheme or what players are asked to do, and generally they're very positive on Chip Kelly. And then there's maybe people that look at kind of the NFL more broadly and maybe in more instant reaction to results positively or negatively that seem to be downer on him. Like Pete Prisco is pretty down on Chip Kelly. Pablo Knows, friend of the show, is pretty down on him, which is interesting considering he has a winning record with pretty bad quarterbacks, which would generally indicate he's a good coach by kind of the QB wins theorem. So what's kind of your take on that? I mean, we're both like huge Chip Kelly fans, so I think we'll put that out there to start with, and then maybe that kind of says where we stand in that spectrum of audience or people talking about football. But is that kind of fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely fair to say. I mean, that's kind of like the reaction that I've seen from folks that there's definitely a divide between people that kind of analyze the game and people that kind of just more casually watch it. What he's and you mentioned this, but what he's been able to accomplish with very mediocre quarterbacks, and you look at how they build an offense, and you look at the production that he's gotten from pretty pretty decent. I mean, some of those players that he's had were really good. Some of them were like just kind of like whatever guys. Like Jordan Matthews to me is just like a whatever guy. Yeah, he released a couple of just kind of expanding now. But yeah, he released some like explosive guys into Deshaun Jackson and LaShawn McCoy. Look, I don't know. Deshaun Jackson's had that reputation of being pretty tough to handle. He was on the outs in Washington until they really exploded here recently. I don't know. I'm not in there. I'm not in the locker room, but judging by their comments since they've left, I mean, I could see them being headaches, and you do have to deal with those guys, and that's an area where I would like to see Chip improve. But as far as like the aspect of what I appreciate of him, I think his schemes they're very difficult to stop, especially if he has the personnel. And I think he was building something that was going to be pretty good. I mean, he did a good job of replacing LaShawn McCoy with two talented running backs, and the fit with DeMarco Murray was probably a bad decision. Big picture.
But Murray also he doesn't look the same player as last year.
Right. And I don't think the mistake was necessarily investing into a running back. I think it was just the player that he invested in was shot. And that's what you worry about coming from like a 500 carry season.
Yeah.
So like I think, and look, I mean, you make bad personnel decisions sometimes. Like it happens. And to be honest, I think that was probably like the worst one that he made, and I don't think it was really that big a deal because it's not like LaShawn McCoy is healthy.
And it's interesting. People are saying that he shouldn't have any personnel power. Are we really judging that off like 8 months?
Yeah, and I don't think he made bad moves. I mean, the move to get Sam Bradford, yeah, it stinks that he gave up a second-round pick.
It's not as bad as the year before when they picked Marcus Smith for the first-round pick, who I liked Marcus Smith, and maybe
I did too, yeah.
But maybe that's like more of a scheme thing. He didn't fit, and maybe that's one reason why he got more powers, because it's like, well, I wouldn't have. This guy doesn't really fit what we're trying to do, so we need to have more kind of input. Jay Glazer's just reporting that Chip Kelly wants to stay in the NFL, so I guess that answers one question about whether he'll go to the college game or not. I guess with the USC job not being around, that kind of makes it a bit easier.
So really it probably becomes
offensively.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess we had one question from Robert Wilkinson asking if the offensive production was hurt because of Bradford's lack of running. I think that's something we kind of saw with the Dolphins' offense this year, even though they're not hugely similar. They do have or used to have zone read elements. The Dolphins won a year ago, and taking that away, I think, hurt the running game when they did run. Do you think that affected the Eagles much, or was it more a factor of just the quarterback play was kind of sporadic?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of moving parts. You had a worse offensive line, a dramatic dip, and it wasn't just Evan Mathis. It was just in general. Jason Peters, he was going to get cut, I think, regardless of injury. He didn't look the same guy that he was really even 2 years ago. Lane Johnson didn't take that next step. Of course, he switched sides on the line. So I mean, there's a learning curve there. Losing Evan Mathis is part of it. There's just a lot of blows to their offensive line, and then all of a sudden you had a slower DeMarco Murray who hesitated and wouldn't hit the hole quite as effectively as what you had hoped, and what I'm sure what he had seen with Dallas. He was pretty good with Dallas. It was a lot going on, and there was a lot of reasons why it didn't work the way that maybe people had hoped, and I had certainly hoped. But Bradford had shown progress toward the end of the year. The receiving core, for being as average as it was, and I really like Nelson Aguilar and stuff, but he's a year away, and he hasn't been able to contribute as much as maybe they had hoped. But there's a lot to really pick apart there, and it was a pretty middling supporting cast. as far as offensive line and receivers. But he still got pretty good production from those guys. And so I think that if you put him in a situation, especially when you look at Miami, where we've talked about this before, the Dolphins have the quarterback, the running backs, the wide receivers in place to be effective day one. Yeah, you have to tinker the offensive line a little bit. You have to get, and maybe even just better coaching, I think, will help that. Um, and a more consistent approach will certainly help that. But I mean, as far as schematically, I think he does a really good job of maximizing the available talent that he has, and I hope that he kind of evolves a little bit to maybe take on more abrasive personalities, because sometimes those are the best players.
And I think if we just talk, I guess one thing that maybe helps with if he were to come to the Dolphins is it's quite a young core, especially offensively. So then he can kind of grow with them and you gain trust where it's not with the Eagles they had, or particularly DeMarco Murray, who's come out leaking stuff about kind of being unhappy. And that's like a veteran coming in with big money, expecting to have a big role in a successful team. Whereas with the Dolphins, you won't really have that defensively. Offensively, defensively, you'll have it with Sue and maybe Wait to a certain degree. So maybe that kind of helps. And then I think the personnel fits quite well, where you have like Stills in that Deshaun Jackson, Aguilar kind of role. You have Devontae Parker that can even play that slot Jordan Matthews role. You have Landry, who can be similar to in the way in which he kind of plays in the slot, where he's bigger than his size, but then also kind of like a Josh Huff kind of esque game to him. If you keep Lamar Miller, I think he's a perfect back for that system. If not Jay Ajar, I think he still works in it. I don't think he's ideal, but I think the way he creates and can catch the ball, that can work. I think Tannehill is like, that's the ideal system for him. I know obviously the Titans having Mariota, that will be kind of the big name link on, because obviously they have a history together, but I think Mariota and Tannehill's games are very similar stylistically, although Tannehill is obviously more developed as he's just had more time. So I think the offense kind of fits well. Maybe even like Cameron Ertz is like not too dissimilar a player. And then obviously the offensive line being kind of mobile, being able to move the guards at second levels. So I think the personnel offensively fits well. And then defensively, there's going to be, we've been talking about this the whole time, there's going to be changes defensively. So I think you can be pretty versatile and mix things up defensively more than you can offensively. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Chip?
I don't think so. I mean, I'll just mention, I understand people's reservations for him. I do think that his stock now might be a little bit lower than what it was a couple years ago, but this might be a good learning opportunity for him, even if it's.
Bill Belichick got fired after 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, everyone gets fired eventually. Like it happens, and maybe this is a learning opportunity. I just think this is a rare opportunity to get someone who is an expert X's and O's person who has the unique experience now. He checks the box. He's been an NFL coach. He has NFL experience. For those there are some people out there, and again, I understand where they're coming from, that they want someone who's a retread, because the point is maybe they learned from their mistakes. Well, now you're getting a guy who could be learning from his mistakes. I mean, what's the ultimate? I mean, think about when, and maybe if you've ever been fired from a job, or if you've ever left the job, even amicably, there's still takeaways, and there's still, maybe regrets, and there's still lessons that you learn from every job that you've been a part of, whether you leave it on a good note or on a bad note. And I just think this is a really, really good time for Miami to take that big swing. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. I mean, like, people act like you're just going to crash and burn the franchise for another 5 years is like the worst thing. Like, the franchise has been that for 15, 20 years. Like, I don't understand, like, what, okay, so you swung big. I'd rather swing big than trying to hit a double with a guy like, um, I don't know, who are some of the most unattractive names we talked about? Like Shula, like hiring like Shula or
Mike
somebody.
Smith.
Mike Smith, yeah, exactly. Like that's the worst case scenario because you're not going anywhere under that guy. You're not going anywhere under Shula. Like I'm sorry, but those guys don't have the prowess and quite frankly the football intelligence to I think really be anything special. And if you want to be great, if you want to be someone that's a becomes a dynasty, you got to sometimes take that massive swing. And you when you swing hard, you're going to strike out sometimes. But I'm okay with that. Like as soon as I found out Joe Philbin wasn't the offensive coordinator for the Packers and that he was just like this PowerPoint guy, I was like, oh, well, that makes complete sense. There's no chance Miami's going to do anything under him, unless if you have like incredible coordinators. There's absolutely no chance. You can't say that about Chip Kelly because Chip Kelly's trying something different, and Chip Kelly has brought something to the table, and we've seen it have success now in the NFL. So I don't know if it's likely. I don't know if it's going to be possible. Um, but I would absolutely go all out to go get him.
And if you want to have I know everyone loves putting Parcells dot to dots for anyone that's associated with the Dolphins. So who also got fired with Chip was Ed Marinowitz. I probably butchered that name, but he was basically like the head of scouting. Got promoted, I think, this year, but Chip Kelly hired him when he first came to the Eagles, and he was a scouting assistant with the Dolphins in 2007. So that was under the Parcells era. Then he went with Saban to Alabama to work there. He has also worked at Central Florida for a while. So, and he would be kind of maybe there's been I think it was NFL.com article talking about how Tannenbaum would like to change up the front office a bit as well. So he's kind of a young guy who would be maybe interested in and not kind of like someone Tannenbaum could mentor as well. And I think you just retweeted something from Zach Whitman saying he's big into analytics, so that kind of meshes with Tannenbaum as well. So if you want, you can make a kind of a nice little tidy picture if you want to. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch on, or should we bugger off?
No, I think we covered it. I mean, he's divisive. He would not have a honeymoon period in Miami, I don't think. But it'd be really funny though to try to see these beat writers like explain his offense.
Yeah,
that'd be hilarious.
You're already seeing Armando saying it's the same one as Laser.
So
that would just be fun to see him just going like, no, it's not the same. No, we're not going to do that. Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, we've got to teach them the new verbiage.
Well, you know what
it's not the same verbiage.
You know what the thing would be is that the articles would start creeping out that would say, oh, well, the master's now running this offense. He just knows it so much better than Laser.
I mean, there's going to be cards on the sidelines. He'll be talking to Tannehill at the line of scrimmage. I mean, it's just going to be there'll be vertical routes from the first snap.
It's beautiful. Like his offense is just wonderful. Like he runs one of the top 3 offenses in the NFL for sure.
Okay, if they hire Chip Kelly, what we'll do is we'll tempt the NFL copyright infringements, and we'll do like a live breakdown of like maybe we even go back to Oregon film, and we'll just like show some like just go through like concepts and how it's like so hard to defend. I think that would be fun to do and just kind of like show why it's fun to watch, and like I don't know, I love Chip. But anyway, we thought we would do this as I just got really excited. So I'm going to put all my MFL 10 winnings onto Chip Kelly becoming Dolphins head coach as soon as those odds come out. And I mean, the Dolphins always win free agency, and this would be the way they would win free agency this year.
Yep.
By getting Chip. So there you go. So thanks for listening to this impromptu Miami pod. Make sure you follow Ian at NFL Film Study, And you can follow the show at MiamiPod, themiamipod.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean. Thanks for listening, and we'll have a post-Pats game, and hopefully that will happen whilst Chip Kelly's being interviewed by the Dolphins. All right, thank you. Goodbye.